everybody, welcome inside the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. Steelers general manager Kevin Colbert holding his pre-combine meeting today with the media, and as you can imagine, a lot of other topics were brought up and focused on. So to break them all down, joining me today is Mike Prisuta. And Trev, we will start, of course, with Antonio Brown. Kevin Colbert saying that he was in Florida yesterday along with Omar Khan, Art Rooney II, of course, Antonio Brown, his father Eddie, and also his agent Drew Rosenhaus. So that meeting did take place. The photo of Art Rooney II and Antonio Brown that we have seen on social media, they were there for it, yes. And basically, Kevin said that what he said in his statement is true, but he made it very clear today that if the Steelers are going to trade Antonio Brown, it has to be beneficial to the Steelers.
Yes, we're open to shopping around the league to see what may be available in exchange for your services. But by no means are we going to make a trade or any type of move that will not be beneficial to the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. Specifically, we will not be discounting you on the trade market, and we certainly will not be releasing you. And again, all that being said, we'll take a positive approach. And if someone has a sincere interest and they want to make a move, either a significant pick or set of picks or a significant player plus picks, and we think it will benefit the Pittsburgh Steelers in the long run, then we're all in.
All right, hearing from Kevin, I think we were with him for about 38 minutes today talking about a number of things. Of course, AB was the main thing. Where do you see this going, Mike?
I see a trade happening, although I gotta credit the production team here. What a great picture of Kevin Colbert with his arms crossed and no smile, because that was kind of the approach with this Antonio Brown trade. Antonio Brown's tweets kind of made it seem like, yeah, the trade's going to happen. And Kevin Colbert today, I think, wanted to put his hand up and say, well, just wait a second. If it's beneficial to the Steelers, it will happen. But he certainly did not rule out the possibility of Brown coming back or staying, I guess I should say, because he is under contract for 3 more years. A little detail that the AB camp sometimes loses track of. But obviously some of this is that the Steelers are going to try to position themselves as flexible as possible. They don't want to come off looking desperate. They don't want to make an announcement, yeah, we're going to have to trade this guy because there's no other way around it. That would lessen the value of any potential deal. But Kevin Colbert, pretty clear that this was discussed and this is an option. And I think it is one. I think the guy's value as a player is still exceptionally high. And I think all it takes is one team to recognize that. You look at the impact that some of the guys that got traded last year had with their teams, Amari Cooper and Demaryius Thomas, and you look at what was being thrown around in exchange for those guys. I think Antonio Brown is better than those guys, and I think it's going to bring a pretty pricey return.
And the Steelers got a 3rd-round pick from Martavis Bryant from the Raiders as well.
Yeah, Brown is better than Bryant as well.
Absolutely. All right, and just to clarify, Kevin Colbert also said no active trade talks have taken place. Of course, the Combine is in Indy next week, and we know that is where a lot of talks for a number of things can start to happen, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. But
that's because the whole league is in one place.
Oh, absolutely.
And because a lot of the league ends up in a different place after the Combine and places that kind of facilitate discussion.
And yeah, before you know it, I mean, the new league year, March 17th, is right around the corner. We are almost there.
What are you doing for New Year's Eve?
Nothing exciting. Nothing exciting. Nothing too exciting. All right, some other news coming out of Kevin Colbert's media availability today. He said that the Steelers will not be using a tag, not the franchise tag and not the transition tag on running back Le'Veon Bell. So very different than what we have seen these past 2 off seasons. Usually it's all options are on the table, but Kevin Colbert saying that it is not worth it this year due to the production of James Conner and Jalen Samuels, and also the number if they use the transition tag, which is over 14 million. Triv, I have to give you credit. This was your question. You asked Kevin to wrap his head around the fact that they might not have Bell or Brown in 2019.
That's how this game happens. You know, we probably lose between 16 and 20 players, I think, as an average for a turnover for an NFL team. And then there's great players that come through. And they either get older or you can't afford them or they get hurt, and you have to recognize that and move on. And that's what we have to do. I mean, yes, Le'Veon was a significant player. Antonio was and still is, and Le'Veon probably will be when he comes back. But this thing is so fluid that it changes constantly, and it's our job to keep up with that change and understand that, Bell was a second-round pick, Antonio was a sixth. Does that mean you're going to get those guys moving forward? I don't know. That's our job to try to make it work and patch it back together so we're not a non-playoff team.
All right, and Colbert did say Bell's not completely off the Steelers' radar. They could still sign him if they want, but I think knowing what kind of money Le'Veon has said that he wanted the past 2 years, I don't think that's going to actually work here.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Miss. I think Bell is another guy who's there will be people lining up to try to get their hands on Le'Veon Bell. The last time we saw Le'Veon Bell, he finished second in the NFL in yards. The last time we saw Antonio Brown, he scored 15 touchdowns in 15 games. These are really good players. Now, I understand that there is roster turnover every year. Some of that is out of your control. I guess what I was asking Kevin today was how do you kind of wrap your head around, these guys didn't get hurt. They didn't get old. They didn't become poor players, but they did both become too expensive for the Steelers in one manner of speaking or another. And I think his response to that question sheds a lot of light on how the Steelers have done business for a long time, and that is that they don't get emotional about this stuff. Fans love to get emotional about it. Sometimes you and I in Labs get emotional about it in this very studio, but the Steelers are very calculating, and they assess their options, and then they make a rational decision as opposed to a knee-jerk reaction, and that's what they've done here. It's a shame, though, because they are both, I think, still at the top of their game.
All right, switching gears, totally unprovoked, though one thing that I think stood out to both of us from Kevin Colbert's media availability was in regards to talking about Ben Roethlisberger and the type of leader he is to this team. I think in light of all the things happening with Antonio Brown lately, maybe some national media, local media too, has put a little bit of brunt of the blame on Ben Roethlisberger. So today, Kevin Colbert talked about one example in that Jacksonville game with a comeback win where he saw number 7 step up.
If anyone ever wants to question the leadership of this player, the Jacksonville game, I saw it firsthand when we come in the locker room at halftime and he brings everybody up, and offense, defense, coaches, you name it. He got everybody's attention. And he said, look, first and foremost, I have to play better in the second half. But we all have to. Offense, defense, special teams. He grabbed the team right away, and that was the whole crux of that halftime. And then he goes out in the second half and helps us with a comeback win. So there's no question that Ben is the leader, but there's also no question the other guys have to fill in the blanks.
Some big words from Colbert there in terms of Roethlisberger and what he means to this team.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, that was unprompted, right? Nobody said, hey,
we didn't even talk about Antonio Brown at that point.
What do you think of Ben's leadership?
Right. Nope.
This is a national story because the Steelers are a high-profile team and because Antonio Brown is a high-profile player, and it has begun to spin out of control on a lot of levels. And in my opinion, one of the things that a lot of people are way off base on is Ben Roethlisberger's accountability in this whole thing and the way it's developed. I've been covering the Steelers for his entire career. I have been at almost every press conference he's ever done, not all of them, because quite frankly, sometimes it's a little boring and you want to talk to somebody else after a game. But he goes out of his way to be accountable. He goes out of his way to take blame when it's not really his fault, but he thinks that's what the quarterback is supposed to do. Does he mention when mistakes are made, when routes are run incorrectly, or when players should keep running under a pass instead of trying to dive for it? Yes, he does. I think fans should appreciate that. And I think the Roethlisberger's teammates should appreciate that because he's not doing it to be vindictive or to assign blame. He's trying to do it to help make them better for the next time. And here's just one other Kevin Colbert thought today on Ben Roethlisberger's leadership. Quote, if our players are smart, they'd listen to him because he's been there. He's done it. Ben Roethlisberger, the only guy who has played for the Steelers in a Super Bowl that the Steelers actually won. So he's been there, done that guy, more Colbert. That can be a burden on him more often than he may like to admit. He has 52 kids under him. I want them to step up and say, hey, Ben, what do I have to do? What do we have to do to win a Super Bowl? He can call me out, and that's fine. What he does, I totally respect. And, Missi, I think that stuff needed to be said, and it needed to be said by somebody with the weight that Kevin Colbert has behind his words, because Ben Roethlisberger is being incorrectly and inappropriately portrayed throughout this thing. He's not the problem.
All right, Kevin Colbert also talking about offense, defense, special teams, things he did not like, things he did like. Of course, on special teams, Colbert echoing what Art Rooney II said following this season here on Steelers Live.
The drop-off of Chris Boswell was surprising, disappointing, and this is something that Chris shares with us like we share with him. We believe that Chris Boswell has the ability to do better than he did. He's already proven that. He set a standard for himself in 2017 as a Pro Bowl player. And last year, statistically, he was one of the worst kickers. And that's a huge drop-off. But as a young player, we also believe that he can find his way out of that, and we will support him in that attempt. Does that mean he won't have competition? Absolutely not.
All right, I think everyone with power here in this building has said this about Chris Boswell, so I think this will be a really important offseason and training camp for him, Mike.
And you cannot underestimate, watch these highlights. Last season, not the one we just completed, but the one before, the Steelers went 13-3.
They carried him off on their shoulders.
They won 5 games by 3 points or fewer. 4 of those were inside the 2-minute warning or at the 2-minute warning, and a couple of those were at the gun. And this year, they go 9-6-1, and Chris Bott, look at the games that they didn't win. There's the opener at Cleveland, missing in overtime. You saw the game at Oakland against the Raiders a minute ago. You could point to the missed extra point here against the Chargers, which should have been a 17-point game, a 16-point game. He wasn't the only factor, but kickers are the guys who can either win it or lose it at the end of games. That's why they're so important. That's why Chris Boswell got a big raise after last year. And that's why, if you look at what happened, how did they get from 13-3 to 9-6-1 and out of the playoffs? You cannot underestimate the inability to make makeable kicks in that scenario. Yeah, they turned the ball over too often. Yeah, the defense gave up too many fourth-quarter leads, but the kicker could have cured a lot of that just by doing stuff that he had done the previous season. That one was a head-scratcher, and I think when Kevin Colbert talks about competition, it's going to be serious. It's going to give us a lot to watch during the special teams periods in Latrobe next summer.
All right, a lot more coming from Kevin Colbert. Bob Labriola will have an article on that for you coming up on Steelers.com. But as I said, next week is the Combine taking place in Indy. And a little programming note for you on Wednesday at 11:15. General Manager Kevin Colbert will be made available once again to everybody in Indy at 11:15 at the podium. That's his usual rounds. We'll also have a chance to talk to him. And there you see kind of the schedule in terms of workouts and interviews and all that fun stuff. And Prisuta, I know you are a Combine junkie.
Yeah, I'm not. You guys go. I like to watch.
You're a TV guy.
On the NFL Network, I get glued to it. They actually do a really good job, I think. And this is an admission maybe that I shouldn't make, but I actually even watched the Senior Bowl practices this year because this draft stuff's a lot of fun. And,
all right, well, the draft's almost here.
We need some fun stuff to talk about.
Got that right.
Start looking ahead, not behind, right?
All right, Mike, thanks so much for joining me today. That is going to do it here from the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. We'll see you next time.